Yes. Hello, thank you. Yeah, I forgot the passcode, Yogi. Okay. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate the work Max does because it's very important to get men around the conversation about male violence against women, because it's not enough if women gather around and talk about it and men don't participate in it at all. So I really appreciate the work that Max is doing. So it's a privilege to come back again and talk about the shitstorm that is India. So I've prepared quite a lot of things to say. So I might be referring to the notes. So I might be looking down quite a bit, but I apologize for that. It's better this way because I have to keep track of time, and the next speaker might have to start on time as well. So here we go. So for several years, I have consistently woken up feeling very helpless and miserable. Of course, it could just be owing to the fact that I come from a country with about 100 recorded rapes a day. Numerous everyday instances of sexual violence faced by women and girls who don't have the voice to make any complaint. Even if they dare to, they get shot down or blamed for their abuses. While talking about the harms of male violence against women in India, I often get asked, come on, is it really that bad? Surely for a country that has sent a rocket to the moon, I bet things have improved for women. No, things have not improved for women. Things have become even more unspeakable and violent for women in my country. So as the theme of the talk goes today, it really is same shit, different era. I've lost the number of times I've brought up rape statistics in an argument, or the experiences of Indian lesbians who are subjected to corrective rapes by their own family members. I scream as loud as I can about the marital rape that still isn't illegal in India. I can't stop talking about the harms of the caste system that lays additional hurdles and unspeakable violence in the lives of women who, just by a cruel chance of birth, have their fates sealed permanently for the worse. I can't imagine what goes on in the minds of women whose bodies are used as an incubator for babies ordered by affluent families all over the world, where the newborn is snatched away even before she has woken up from anesthesia. The unspeakably damaging life of women and girls trafficked and forced into sex trade, with nearly 15 to 20 males penetrating her on a nightly basis, where in some cases, underage girls are injected with cow steroids by pimps and johns. The degeneracy of men who look for videos of women who were gang raped on porn websites moments after the media releases the victims' names. And the number of times this has happened where the victim was a minor. Or just about every form of abuse an Indian woman faces from the time she is born to the time she is murdered, dead, or she kills herself. As a 37-year-old adult woman who has been campaigning for women's sex-based rights my whole adult life, I find myself in a strange predicament, as I can't seem to get by a single day without being called a fascist or a Nazi for stating that the atrocities that women endure on the basis of their sex can't be wished away by capitulating to any dogmatic ideology. While we haven't even fully grasped the enormity of dangers that befall the females of the world, we are now deprived of a language to call it what it is: male violence against women. Because the biggest, most pressing non-issue of our time is to cater to the whims of men, of arrogant men who wish to play dress up and call themselves females. Having seen my country be ravaged by some of the most unfathomable sectarian clashes and the blatant impunity the abusers enjoy, I certainly did not imagine that we would be here in 2023 being called literal monsters for the crimes of daring to safeguard women and children. But I want to go back a little bit because there is more to my radicalization story than what meets the eye. Years ago, when I was still sipping on the Kool-Aid, I was in awe of Western feminists who periodically pointed out the plight of Indian hijras while talking about the LGBT issues. I was pleasantly surprised by the way global feminism borrowed from Indian mythology, that even as an atheist, it made a larger point about hijras and hermaphrodites and other gender-bending nonconformists. It made me wonder if it was a good thing. Thankfully, I didn't let my brain decay in that muck for very long. I know for a fact that every stakeholder in Indian society recruited to further this agenda knows fully well that the existence of an androgynous character in a man-made mythology does not confirm any ambiguity in sex. Because if that were possible, we would also have to justify other characters from the same mythology, like gravity-defying monkeys and a bridge-building squirrel, among other things. The trans activists and their stooges have what I call a willfully ignorant selective preference. Any person with about 2 brain cells will eventually be able to connect the dots as to where the scavenger hunt is leading to, and how in the end the prize these men will take home is a collapse of humanity and the corpses of females. I'm told I paint a very grim picture about what the future holds, and here I am feeling inadequate for not finding enough panic words to shake everyone out of this delusion. It is evident that this ideology is orchestrated by highly privileged white men whose depraved sexual fetishes drive them to unspeakable lengths. They then carry on this sinister imperialism by luring the greedy and the perverts from around the world. Indian men don't require much persuasion because they have the reputation of being one of the world's largest consumers of pornography. Incidentally, one of the co-authors of a teacher's manual meant to teach Indian children about LGBTQ rights is a porn-sick male who posts pictures of himself naked online. He has a public profile of a TRA, stunning and brave and all of that shit. He also has an account on a subreddit called Indian Sissies, where he calls himself still a slut. In a twisted way, the West has overused the South Asian eunuchs to both normalize administering puberty blockers to children and erasing women's sex-based rights. The TRAs have done a good job in picking at the wound of historic mass guilt at the way we treated homosexuals in the past and the way we continue to treat members of the oppressed castes. Now, if you're not familiar with the caste system, perhaps we can do that during the Q&A, but I will carry on now. But a man's feeling don't make him a woman, no matter how many tautological arguments TRAs throw at us. This is an affront to the existence of every female human in this country. Gender ideology is a system which embodies a philosophy that is antithetical to every menial stride we have made in the past. A system that disadvantages women, even within the structures designed for women. The apathy gender ideology shows towards women, their boundaries, their needs, their entire life, should shock the world. Yet provisions are being made as I speak for male access into safe spaces of women. The more misogyny these depraved men exhibit, the more hardline my feminism became. That includes refusing to adhere to pronoun terrorism, just as much as vehemently opposing the idea of male in female spaces. In my mind, there is no middle ground in this war against women. So given that there already exist mounting reasons to focus on violence faced by women, I would like to list a set of dangerous developments triggered by the gender identity ideology and how the focus has completely and blatantly shifted to glorifying the said ideology. A 30-something man was convicted for raping a minor, and he pleaded innocence, claiming trans identity. Court used preferred pronouns and placed him in a women's prison estate, where he doesn't belong, of course. Further, in its judgment, the court has informed the Director General of Police that special arrangements are to be made for detaining her at the women's prison until she is transferred to a special jail for transgender convicts. There is no such transgender prison, and there are no updates on whether he has been moved. The DGP was also directed to see to the dignity and honor of the accused to make sure that it is safeguarded while he is at women's prison. Now, for context, there are over 20,000 female inmates in jails across all states in India. Yet only 15 states and union territories have women-only estates. In total, there are 31 exclusively female facilities, but only 18% of female prisoners are incarcerated there. So despite the low occupancy in these female-only facilities, women are housed in overcrowded jails amongst male prisoners. States with no separate jails, of course, have no other option, but the problems are exacerbated in sub-jails where overcrowding can touch up to 400%. Lack of attention to the specific requirements of incarcerated women has resulted in continued neglect of their human rights. Food rations are smaller, infrastructure is poorer, they often lack access to adequate female prison staff, good sanitation and hygiene, accessible healthcare and legal aid. Women are known to have had miscarriages and not taken to the hospital until hours after bleeding in the cell. This is apart from rapes, abuse, and terror women face as part of custodial violence in the hands of male officers. And the court want to prioritize the dignity and honor of a man. In another case, a 47-year-old man was convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison for drugging and raping a woman. The headline on one of the media report read, "Fake transgender gets 7 years jail for rape and black magic in Mumbai." Another read, "Man gets 7 years jail term for raping a woman posing as transgender." It is rather hasty for national news outlets to make such conclusions about the fakeness of this man without investigating it further. The judge too came to the same conclusion, that the rapist was in fact not transgender. Does the judge think a man can pretend to be a man pretending to be a woman? Maybe this is just a clever strategy to completely absolve these men of their crimes. You are trans if you say you are. Unless you're a rapist, then the judge will rule that you're faking it. And why is the judge not accused of transphobia? How dare he make such assumptions? Where are the trans rights activists? Where is the social media uproar? Or is that mayhem only reserved for feminists like me? Nobody in the media or legal system understand that these men retain their penis, even if they choose to get rid of their testicles. Because of such obscurity, trans-identifying male criminals try to get away with their crimes. Because the courts believe, I'm assuming, trans-identifying males aren't capable of penetration, so to speak. This is despite a growing number of crimes by that demographic. Their crimes extend into several occult practices. Several of these men believe in superstitions, human sacrifices, raping a virgin, etc. To give you a few examples, in Hyderabad, a trans-identifying male confessed to murdering an 8-year-old boy after being caught on CCTV carrying the body across the street in broad daylight. The family suspect this to be a case of human sacrifice, but the police haven't confirmed it. But based on the case we just saw in Bombay, the family's fears are justified. These men from the hijra community also believe in self-inflicting harmful practices. Serena Nanda, an author, in her book called Neither Man Nor a Woman, writes about the hijra emasculation operation, which is conducted by another hijra, and they call him Daima. Daima loosely translates to midwife. So these men call themselves midwives. As it signifies, this emasculation process signifies a rebirth. So this midwife makes 2 quick opposite diagonal cuts by cutting in the name of the goddess. The organs, both penis and testicles, are completely separated from the body. A small stick is put into the urethra to keep it open. When the cut is made, the blood gushes out and nothing is done to stem the flow. The man is left to bleed without any medical intervention because it is believed that the blood is the male part that's leaving the body and should be drained off. To ensure no stitches are administered to stop the flow, they only have another hijra do the operation. If others do it, for example, the sex change doctors who are available at hospitals, they might try to stop the flow. And this is considered less effective ritually. I can so see all of you getting so uncomfortable. This feels so good. Several media houses overlook mounting crimes as anomalies. Even repeated occurrences of similar crimes do not warrant concerted scrutiny by journalists or legal bodies. A poor 13-year-old boy in Delhi was forced to undergo sex change surgery and raped multiple times. At 17, he managed to escape along with another young boy who was about to be operated on. For 4 years, 6 men abused and exploited them. Several more raped him too. There is also an utterly tragic case of a minor who was abducted and forcefully castrated and operated on again in 2008 to regain his lost boyhood. In 2008, he was still a minor, so the legalities seem to have been overlooked. The media glorified how modern science and a team of gifted doctors turned a eunuch into a boy again. Another investigation revealed how the entire operation remains a secret, as the hijra community is built on a pyramid structure, and that young boys are abducted, made addicts, and then pushed into prostitution. A spokesperson of this organization called All India Hijra Kalyan Sabha, formed in 1984, said that, quote, "The hijra mafia controls the castrations, operates secretly throughout the country. They have a network of hijra mandis, or a space for themselves, where a newly castrated eunuch is auctioned to the highest bidder. The auction is conducted with claps. A single clap means ₹1,000. Fair, clean-limbed boys who can earn more attract more bids, highest bids. Victims are threatened with death if they break the silence. End quote. Apart from the pedophilic, revolting paraphilias of men, there is a market for virgin girls that points towards something far more sinister. Originating in South Africa and Zimbabwe, I wonder if you're familiar with this thing that began in 1990s. Having sex with a virgin was wrongly promoted as cure for men having HIV/AIDS, a fallacious claim which led to a steep rise in the rapes of babies and children. This virgin cleansing myth, also known as virgin cure myth, virgin rape myth, or simply virgin myth, took hold in South Asia. India, along with Thailand, became one of the early adopters of this practice during the height of HIV epidemic. While the practice was thought to have died out in India, some sources think otherwise. Certainly, many social workers online maintain that it remains ubiquitous. As of 2017, India has the third highest HIV epidemic in the world, with 2.1 million people living with the disease. HIV prevalence is higher among men than women, and this is due to high prevalence among key population including men who have sex with men, they're called MSM, migrant workers, truck drivers, and men who use drugs. Though compared to neighboring countries, India has made huge strides in reducing the HIV infections. The social workers who see the plight of prostituted women up close think this horror show of child rape is far from over. Within the MSM demographic, the men who have sex with men demographic, is the trans-identifying men, almost all of whose livelihood depends on prostitution. The proportion of trans-identifying men who prostitute themselves is estimated to be 90% in India, and they are 49% at risk of living with HIV than the general population. On July 27, 2021, a trans woman kidnapped and raped a 3-month-old baby girl in Bombay, who was later found dead by the police, buried alive. Whether these innocent girls were used as some mystical cure or as mere holes for men to insert themselves, no law or government is going to come to their rescue. The piling number of trans crimes largely go unreported in the mainstream media, save for some odd newsy pieces that don't scratch past the surface. Just last month, another man was caught filming women using a toilet in a mall. When caught, he said that his pronoun was they and that he was a lesbian. None of the liberal media made the connection. There are now affirmative actions across job opportunities, qualifying scores for entrance exams, provided exclusively for trans-identifying male, not for trans-identifying females. Shocking. Recently, 3 men self-identifying as female applied to be constables at the police recruitment board. Their petition to be eligible for employment in this role significantly influenced the Madras High Court to pass a special judgment to provide reservation for trans women. These 3 men couldn't apply for the job due to the upper age limit of 26. All of them were older. And this is where it gets twisted. The Police Recruitment Board has existing provisions for destitute widows to seek employment due to the death of their husband while on duty. And their age limit is 35. The TRAs behind the case cited that the petitioner's upper age limit must be that of a destitute widow, for after all, they too are marginalized based on their gender. The plea was allowed by the judge, and the 3 men took the aptitude test. Now, having taken the test and failed, these men wanted a much lower cutoff mark, as that of the destitute widow, of course. So they filed another petition at the court, and they got what they demanded. Trans-identifying men can seek redressal under the Domestic Violence Act of 2005. While I'm not condoning violence of any kind and fully believe everybody should receive protection under the law, it feels like an infringement. It is an infringement. Especially as the Supreme Court has recently concluded that the working of the Domestic Violence Act is dismal, with 470,000 reported cases pending to be heard. Last month, the Women's Reservation Bill was passed in the Parliament, a bill that was pending for more than a quarter of a century. One that was supposed to grant 33% reservation for females in the Lok Sabha, the House of the People, the lower house, and then we have the upper house, and then the president. Not a moment had passed when women restarted dialogue about the need for it. The trans rights activists started making it about themselves. That this minuscule 33% should of course include trans women. Of course, obviously. First of all, this reservation can be implemented only after a delimiting exercise, as they call it. Delimitation means basically to redraw the constituencies of Lok Sabha and Assembly to change the boundaries according to the latest census. Our census was supposed to be done in 2021, but due to COVID, it didn't happen. So it is estimated that the implementation of this bill can only be done by 2029 or 2031, the Women's Reservation Bill. But years before this debate, a man contested in a village panchayat election in a female-only quota and won. There were female reserved quotas for the district and the village panchayat level even before they got it to the Lok Sabha level, so he could contest for it. He won, and his manifesto included laying roads, which is important, but without clear demarcations, we run the risk of not just losing access to women-only affirmative action, since now anyone can be a woman, but also of being entirely written off from exercising our fundamental rights. States are eliminating sex-segregated schools, hostels, and other safe spaces in the name of inclusion. Bombay High Court recently ordered all colleges to have an online option to change name and gender to minimize students' trauma. Several states' high courts have passed orders that men who have a female gender identity can participate in any sport of their choice under any category based on said identity. A man participated in the Asian Games recently that concluded, and there was a case where the Indian woman who came fourth, made a tweet saying that this is unfair because the person who came third was in fact male. The tweet was deleted within a fraction of a second, and moments later, she produced an unconditional apology for having said that. We don't know about that case anymore. The media has completely buried it. But based on what we see online, based on the interviews that this person who won bronze has given, I suspect he is male. Shockingly, on August 16th this year, the Chief Justice of India is a woke extraordinaire, as I'd like to call him. He revealed a booklet to combat gender stereotypes in which he used unscientific and not to mention non-legal terminologies like cis, assigned sex, etc. And he normalized sexual slavery of women by calling it sex work. In it, it doesn't come as any surprise to me because during the hearing of petition of same-sex marriages, which they have now shamelessly changed the name for as marriage equality petitions. It's no longer same-sex petitions anymore. About this as well, I can talk more during the Q&A. The Chief Justice of India said that the concept of male and female are not absolute. The Chief Justice of India. And finally, there is a huge push to transition children by government and aided bodies like the UNAIDS, the foreign funding organizations that have helped setting up trans clinics used to be organizations that once were invested in creating AIDS awareness and things like that. Have all changed into trans clinics right now. And they're there in pretty much every city, in every state, sometimes even in the nooks of some villages where it is hard to get through. But they target minors through their advertisements with a woefully obtuse campaign called Unbox Me. And I suppose put them in a different box, I don't know, later, something. They claim children know their gender identity when they're as young as 2 years old. I don't even remember being alive when I was 2 years old. Apparently you know your gender identity. Maybe you know it when you're in the womb. And if you call your son or daughter, that might be a crime in the future, who knows. So rather than unboxing adolescents, setting them free to develop along their own trajectory, this belief system seeks to confuse them, stunt them, block them, and in doing so, denies them a childhood that they were entitled to. In a heartbreaking article where a young lesbian from an economically downtrodden community was glorified for being a star trans icon by the media for what she did in the name of love, everybody probably ignored the line that was tucked away at the very end of the piece. She said, "If only gay marriage was legal, I wouldn't have had to do this to be with someone I love." That should have been the headline. It got tucked away at the very end and nobody made the connection. I would like to show a short video right now, and I'll probably just summarize right after that. What's that? Gone. Okay.
Before I moved in with him, he told me that he used to be a transvestite. You have to bear in mind that this was 20 years ago. So this was before the explosion of gender ideology. I said, well, what do you mean used to be? And he said, well, I haven't done it since I met you. And that was the start of an ongoing process of binging and purging, boundary negotiation, boundary violation, like going up a staircase where the bottom of the staircase was that conversation where he said I used to be a transvestite, and the top of the staircase was him deciding that he was going to transition. At first, because I was young and quite naive, I thought it was something that I might be able to deal with. And I don't mean transition would be something that I might be able to deal with, because that wasn't on my radar. An occasional cross-dressing hobby might have been something that I could deal with, because I can remember thinking, well, you know, there's worse hobbies. He could be gambling. At first I thought, okay, I loved him and I was in love with him. And this was introduced to me as something that I used to do. And it was presented to me then as that he wasn't doing it anymore. But then, of course, he started doing it again.
Sondern wie ich dann, als ich dann weiter auf seinem Handy herumstöberte, herausfand, dass er selbst Damenunterwäsche für sich selbst bestellte und Perücken und Schuhe und verschiedener Art. Als ich ihn dann darauf ansprach und fragte, was das alles sollte, ja, sagte er mir, dass er keine Affäre hätte, sondern er würde diese Sachen selbst tragen. Und als ich das hörte, ja, wurde mir schlecht. Auch wenn ich jetzt weiß, dass er das Geheimnis hat, habe ich mich dazu entschlossen, bei ihm zu bleiben, gemeinsam irgendwie durchzustehen, weil ich irgendwie denke, dass so eine komische sexuelle Neigung nicht vom Himmel fällt und ja auch irgendwie interessiert daran bin, ob man das nicht irgendwie, ja, ich will jetzt nicht sagen heilen kann, aber irgendwie lernen kann, damit umzugehen. Ich finde, wir haben 2 gemeinsame Kinder, wir müssen irgendwie damit klarkommen. Das ganze Trans-Thema ist hier in Deutschland, und das ist im Moment hier ein immer größer werdendes Thema. Und diese Leute sitzen im Fernsehen oder sonst wo und dürfen ihre Geschichte erzählen. Was aber völlig hinten runterfällt, muss man sagen, sind die Partner. Für diese Geschichten interessiert sich niemand, weil es eben gerade politisch nicht korrekt ist, darüber zu reden. Deswegen schweigen wir alle, wir Frauen, darüber, und gar nicht mehr so einfach ist, dass dann dadurch die Frau in die Rechtfertigung kommt, zu erklären, warum sie nicht mehr in der Ehe bleiben will. Nicht der Mann erklären muss, warum er eine Frau ist plötzlich nach x Jahren Ehe, oder da wird die Position der Frau doch sehr stark nach hinten gedrängt. Das wird doch da sehr deutlich.
I went to check my Facebook page one night and I used his laptop that was in the living room, and I went to get on my account and I noticed that an account was already open and it had a female profile and a female name. I looked a little closer and realized that it was his account. He was talking about our sex life and how boring it was, and asking them to describe what they're wearing, their underwear, and then talking about how aroused he was. Well, after I found his Facebook page, I went and I searched through the house, specifically the room that he had his computer in, because I thought there's no way there's nothing. And where I thought there were spare computer parts and what have you, I started pulling out lingerie, clothes, shoes, sex toys. It was a sizable pile, and I had no idea that it was there. It was really offensive too. I'm looking at this pile of things and I'm thinking, this is what you think a woman is? When did he do all this while we were married? Was it after I went to bed, a day after taking care of babies and doing housework, while he sat down there doing what I thought was his schoolwork? All those times he could have helped, or he could have been a parent, or he could have been a father. And instead, this is what he chose to do. And then he turns around and blames me and the rest of the world for being closed-minded and ignorant. I didn't tell anyone. How could I? I mean, I don't know if I knew that people were transgender when I was that age, but I didn't know that they got married and they lived a secret life. And I didn't tell his parents. And then it turns out these people knew and they did not tell me. I mean, I thought they were on my side and I thought they would see the things that were happening to me and the children and be at least sympathetic or at least try to help us also. It felt like this great cosmic joke after a while. His friends knew, his family knew. The only person that didn't know was me.
私は元夫と初めて会ったとき、職場でいじめとパワハラにあって疲れ果てていました。誰にも頼れず孤独でした。孤独は思考回路をおかしくするのは間違いありません。お互い家庭で辛い思いをしていたこともあって、逃げるように一緒に住むことになりました。また、元夫にとって東京に来たかったのは、ジェンダークリニックに通いやすくするためでした。心は女だから、女同士として恋人になって、とも言われました。ある朝、私は元夫に男性器でレイプされました。コンドームもなしでした。目が覚めた私が、何をしているのと聞いたら、私のことを使って G をしているというのが答えで、そこからレイプしてきました。元夫といた間、私はうつ状態でした。この人に捨てられたら死んでしまうと思い込むことによって、異常なことも我慢して、そして搾取されていました。そのため、私は心を深く病んで、会社にいても気絶するようになり、普通に生活することもできなくなりました。私はお金を失い、体にも異常が出て、うまく体が食事を受け付けない状態になりました。元夫は、お人よしで気前のいい人につけ込んで、自分の利益だけを考えて生きている人だったんです。私はそのことに気づきませんでした。思い返すと、私は当初ヒーローになった気分でした。私は元夫が夢を叶えるための財布と踏み台でした。よく戦った私、今はほとんど動けません。東京で一人暮らしの女性は、ジェンダークリニックに通うために近づく地方のトランスがいるから気をつけてください。自分自身の財産と生活を守れないのに、他人の踏み台になろうとしては絶対にダメです。男に振り回されて生きる必要なんてありません。
Initially, he said to me, "Oh, the children will have to know that they now have two mothers." And then I just looked at him and he said, "Oh, maybe you wouldn't want that." So I would say, if you're now a woman, are you going to do the washing up? Are you going to wash the clothes? Are you going to vacuum the floor? Are you going to stay up all night when the babies are crying? Are you going to be the ones to make sure they have the right packed lunch for school and do all of those things? No, it's all about the sex and all about wearing nail polish. I did discover that he is a porn addict. I do know that the sex and kink is definitely a big part of it. When I asked him, how do you know? How do you know you're transgender? When did you start to feel this way? And the only thing he said to me was, when he was a teenager, he would imagine himself as a girl in a lesbian relationship. And that's the only thing he ever said about it. It seems to me that there's a very clever and influential group of men who are controlling the narrative. So people are unaware of the abuse that goes with the territory. Even so, they still have to realize that this is going to be upsetting for wives and children, and that those people deserve support. And I find it extraordinary that there's so much upheaval in society to accommodate what I've been told is less than 0.4% of the population. You cannot turn them back from this once they've started. Once you allow for one little thing, like they're going to maybe wear women's underwear when they're in the house, it's only going to get worse from there. And don't be embarrassed, because the embarrassment is not yours. Perhaps because it is a women's issue, it just hasn't come to the attention. They just haven't prioritized it. But really, society is moving so fast on the trans issue that the mosques need to keep up. And it's not just within the mosque itself, but outside of the mosque, where there have been services set up for Muslim women. Male-bodied people are now entering those spaces. Does that mean then that those religious women are then just forced back into their homes? I don't know what the way forward is. I suppose the more people that come forward with their story, the more these authorities have to realize this is something that is affecting our communities, just as it affects other communities.
Caitlyn Jenner's son Brody, he was talking about his father, and he said he, and Twitter just slammed him down. People were just really, how dare you? Right, Kate, it's a she, la la la. And this had a kind of like, even though it seems so silly, but it had a visceral reaction. I was like, because I thought, this is a child talking about his dad, right? He's allowed to freaking say what his dad is. He's allowed to use his language to describe his father. And I thought, is it possible that what I experienced and my thoughts around this could be helpful in this debate? So I set up this website, I started blogging, and the first thing I wrote was the pressure to pretend it's all okay. I got an email from someone telling me that they wished I'd die of brain cancer and some really, really horrible things. You're a child, you're talking about your parents, and somebody comes in and says, you can't say that. Why not? This experience of being a prop in someone's authentic experience, in someone's validation. You're not having an authentic experience. You're not being validated. This isn't happening for you because it's a narcissistic condition. We're actually writing to politicians. We wrote about the GRA. We're talking to Parliament. We've met with, MPs and things like that, because we really want to state a case for us, for children transitioners, this very, very minority voice that is completely unheard. All we're asking for is equal treatment. Equal treatment. That if you're listening to the AGPs, you've got to listen to us as well.
So, in conclusion, while all this feels extremely hopeless, I try to do what I can. I write, I make films about the dangers of this misogynistic ideology, and through my upcoming film, Behind the Looking Glass, I hope to bring to light the voices of trans widows, and even more disenfranchised and minority group, minority demographic that warrants mainstream attention. It may seem like this isn't our problem. This does not concern men, but in a world being ripped apart by male violence, it shouldn't have to concern you for you to take action. We have to wake up to reality. You have to make your voice count, express your dissent in a clear, courageous, and consistent manner, even if it is for the benefit of a child who hasn't walked among us yet. Thank you.